All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome in. So in this one, I wanted to talk a little bit about a head coaching candidate for the New York Jets that right now I just feel like isn't really being talked about all that much, specifically with the Jets job. And, a big reason why is because he's currently employed by the Dallas Cowboys. It's Mike McCarthy. But as the weeks are going by, it's really looking like McCarthy leaving Dallas is a real possibility here. So, yes, of course, we can talk about Mike Vrabel. We can talk about Brian Flores and Ben Johnson, right? The Jets are interviewing Rex Ryan on Tuesday. All these different head coaching candidates. Josina Anderson actually reported that there's internal conversations about Cliff Kingsbury and Arthur Smith. So many different candidates. But again, when it comes to Mike McCarthy specifically, I wanted to dive into it. And look, I understand that Mike McCarthy doesn't really have the best reputation. Not many people like him, right? Especially with the playoff defeats these past couple of seasons in Dallas. Look, I completely understand it, right? But look, I got to be honest, and this is just my opinion here. I actually think the Jets should take a look. If Mike McCarthy hits the open market, I would not be mad, upset in the slightest if the Jets took a hard look at Mike McCarthy, right? Brought him in for an interview. I think McCarthy, to me at least, and by the way, this is just my opinion. If you disagree, totally cool. I would actually love to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. I just simply wanted to point out some of the facts. Right, what are the facts when it comes to Mike McCarthy right now? This is someone who has 18 years of head coaching experience in the National Football League, 12 playoff trips, and 1 Super Bowl championship. His career record is 287 wins to 174 losses. I think when we're specifically talking about the New York Jets head coaching opening, it does feel like there's a lot of, it really feels like it's the world against the Jets. Right? Oh, this is a dysfunctional organization. This is a losing organization. They have a meddling owner, one of the worst in sports. They haven't reached 500. They have the playoff drought, tons of roster holes. This is a job with pressure. This is a big job here. I honestly, I believe that this is one of the reasons why a lot of people are a little hesitant on giving a first-time head coach, Joe Brady, Liam Cohen, Aaron Glenn, the job. Because it's like, hey, you have a lot of responsibility here, dealing with the media, dealing with the pressure, dealing with, a big market organization like the Jets, dealing with this ownership. You can't come in and get pushed around. You have to have a strong mentality. Hence why a lot of people like Mike Vrabel. Hence why, a portion of the fan base likes a Rex Ryan. Woody, sit down. I can take it from here. I don't like that idea. We're not doing it. Media, storylines, I'm not going to get bothered by it. I'm mentally strong enough to, know who we are and to have that mental fortitude throughout the week to where we're not going to allow this stuff to creep into the locker room. Again, Mike McCarthy being this 18-year head coaching veteran, if you will, who's coached for 2 of the biggest brands in the National Football League for the entirety of those 18 years in the Green Bay Packers. And yes, of course, Green Bay is considered a small market, but again, looking at the brand size, Green Bay is absolutely massive. And then, of course, the number 1 most popular team in the National Football League, the Dallas Cowboys. McCarthy can step into the Jets locker room and say, look, this job is not too big for me. I'm not going to be scared. I'm not going to be rattled. I'm not going to be affected by what comes with the job. Big market, all these different quote unquote negatives about the Jets right now. We could also point to ownership. Who is Mike McCarthy dealing with right now? Who has he been dealing with for the past handful of seasons? Jerry Jones. That's literally one of the loudest, if not the loudest owner in the sport. Someone who creates headlines, someone who will just spill the beans to the media. He will literally analyze players and positions to the media. If you're a head coach, that's not the most ideal position that you want to be in. In other words, Mike McCarthy's weathered, right? Mike McCarthy has been through the ringer. He knows how to deal with a big market. He knows how to deal with expectations. He knows how to deal with a loud owner that is constantly around the facility. I don't think the Jets are too big of a job for him. I don't see him getting bullied. I don't see him getting pushed around, being forced into what to do. And one of my favorite things about McCarthy is that he's an actual adult. He's an adult. He knows how. Say what you want about him, the playoff losses, the quarterback statistics, all these different things. Mike McCarthy knows how to come in and set a plan. He knows how to create and operate an NFL structure, right? How to practice, how to focus on details, how to game plan, how to look at themselves, right? How to look at an opponent each and every week and say, hey, this is how we're going to attack this team, right? We're going to come up with these 2-3 things throughout the week, really grind at them. And so when Sunday rolls around, we're going to be well prepared and accomplished to handle this team, handle the opposition here. I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that Mike McCarthy went 12-5 his first 3 years, 12-5, 12-5, 12-5. And then, of course, this season has not gone their way. There has been some question marks. I'm not saying Mike McCarthy's a top 5 coach or anything. This is not Andy Reid coming from Philadelphia to Kansas City, not putting him in that echelon. But again, just simply looking at the facts, looking at McCarthy's resume, looking at his win-loss total. Another thing that I don't want to go unnoticed here is that Mike McCarthy continuously preaches commitment, discipline, responsibility to the game of football, right? He's not like when I think back to these solid press conferences, right? I mean, we can even talk about the Buffalo Bills game, right? Where Michael Clemens jumped onto the pile, like just like what it's like a what are you doing type of moment, and I cannot stand that type of stuff. There's just no standard when it comes to the Jets. I don't want to sit here and sound like a broken record, but man, I cannot stress it enough. The Jets need a standard. Pick out any well-ran team in football. Steelers, Ravens, Chiefs, Eagles, Packers, Lions. Any well-ran team, there's a standard there. Play like a Raven, right? When you think of the Pittsburgh Steelers, what do you think of? Tough, physical, defense, trench play, player development, never too high, never too low. There's just a steady, consistent model in place. And I do believe that Mike McCarthy, when you compare Mike to Saleh, to Ulbrich right now, to some of these other coaches who simply have just unknowns, who knows? Maybe Ben Johnson is the greatest leader of all time. We don't know that. He has not been a head coach. Maybe he's an absolutely terrible leader. We have no idea, right? And so that's the benefit of hiring a coach that has been through the process before, that has done this before. So personally, I think Mike McCarthy, and look, I understand that this might not be a popular opinion. I understand that the reputation, the optics around Mike McCarthy is almost a failure, just never gets it done in the playoffs. It's very similar to Marvin Lewis. Great regular seasons. Once the playoffs roll around, it's a disappointment. And, I think, just my opinion here, the losses in the playoffs they've always just been weird. I think with McCarthy and Marvin Lewis, they're similar in this aspect. They almost treat, and granted, I'm not in the locker room with these guys. I'm not watching how they're practicing, but it kind of feels like they treat playoff games like regular season games, if that makes sense. Like there's just that lack of that creative step or that ability to shift into the sixth gear, right? Like there's just not that extra level once the playoffs come around. It's kind of status quo. What you see is what you get. And granted, I mean, the Dallas Cowboys have been really, really good these past couple of seasons. Green Bay, it's tons of wins all over the place. Again, McCarthy knows how to build a plan. He can step into a locker room and say, this is how we practice. This is how we're going to do things. This is how to be a professional. And I 100% fully buy into that. Here's my issue with McCarthy, though, which I don't know. I don't know if this would happen. I don't know if this wouldn't happen. But I prefer Mike McCarthy in a CEO style of role. I don't want him calling plays. I don't. I would like Mike McCarthy to have the funds from ownership to build a creative, innovative staff around him. I think, it's one thing to go out and snag a defensive coordinator, one of these veteran minds. So many teams do this, right? I mean, I could see him bringing over a Mike Zimmer. I could see him hiring a Dennis Allen, maybe bringing a Leslie Frazier out of retirement, right? Just someone like that, like an established defensive mind that could handle that side. But I've always kind of felt like, especially towards the tail end of the Packers days, even like this season too, to a certain degree with Dallas, it's Mike McCarthy's play calling, which I have a hard time getting behind. So ideally, if you can go out and maybe hire one of the coaches that get fired this cycle, right? If the Jets beat the Dolphins in the last week, does Mike McDaniel stay? Does Shane Steichen stay with the Colts? I think maybe adding an innovative offensive mind would really help Mike McCarthy out. So that way, Mike McCarthy is in charge of everything. But when it comes to play calling specifically, he could relay the message, and then those coaches, again, the OC, the DC, whoever they may be, can take the reins and hit the ground running, right, on Sundays, on game day. That's my only thing. Right, if the Jets were to hire McCarthy, and by the way, a lot of things still need to happen, right? The Dallas Cowboys need to officially announce that they're not going to be bringing McCarthy back. But again, if McCarthy were to get the gig and, he's not building his staff effectively, or Woody Johnson is not, supplying the cash needed to go out and make some splashy hires at the coordinator positions, and if it's up to Mike to try to, make it work with just, kind of random guys, not to be rude or disrespectful. But, in other words, I don't want to see Mike McCarthy hire people and then in the back of his mind think to himself, I can't trust these guys. I got to do everything. So that's just my 2 cents on it. I would love to hear yours down below in the comment section. Again, I know this might not be popular. I know that Mike McCarthy is just, he gets absolutely torched from national sports media outlets and whatnot. The constant losses in the playoffs. But I think specifically for the Jets, it would just be nice to have an adult at the helm. I don't want to sweep that under the rug. I think that's really, really important. Hey, he's a professional. I can step in and do this. I can work with ownership. I can work with the media. I can work with the market size. I can work with the pressure. McCarthy, year in and year out is constantly dealing with the pressure to win, right? The pressure to make the playoffs, the pressure to win the division, the pressure to have offenses consistently get in the end zone. So I do actually think it would be a great fit. Anyway, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section on this. And as always, go Jets.